Domestique redirects here. For other similar terms, see Domestique. A domestique is a road bicycle racer who works for the benefit of his team and leader. In French, domestique translates as servant. The use of the term dates back to 1911, although such riders had existed before then. Origins: much of a cyclist's effort is to push aside the air in front of him. Riding in the slipstream of another rider is easier than taking the lead. The difference increases with speed. Racers have known this from the start and have ridden accordingly, often sharing the lead between them. From there it is a small step to employing a rider to create a slipstream while his leader rides behind him. More complicated tactics become possible as the number of domestiques available increases. Where the domestique finishes a race is less important than the help he gives. Domestiques do not share the fame of leaders such as Edmesckx, Bernard Hinault or Miguel Indurain, but can achieve fame of their own. Lucien Aymar, who supported Jacques Anquetil, won the 1966 Tour de France. Greg LeMond won the 1986 Tour de France after being Bernard Hinault's domestique in the 1985 Tour de France, as did Chris Froome in 2013 after riding for Bradley Wiggins in 2012. The writer Roger St. Pierre said, "First domestiques, the first riders known to have been employed to help a leader were Jean Dargassiers and Henri Gourbon. They rode in the 1907 Tour de France for Henri par copyright Pin, who promised them the equivalent of first prize if they would pace him from restaurant to restaurant. The three never hurried. They took 12 hours and 20 minutes longer than a per-mile judget on the stage from Roubaix to Metz. They were far from last, and the judges were powerless because the race was decided not on time but points. It mattered less what speed riders competed than the order in which they crossed the line. In an era when riders could be separated by hours, there was no point in hurrying after a rival who could not be caught and passed. The judges had to wait for everyone. The rules of the Tour in its first decades forbade team riding, but par copyright Pin did little to affect the result. He dropped out on stage 5. Terminology origin: the word was first used in cycling as an insult for Maurice Brocco, known as Coco, in 1911. Brocco started 6 Tours de France between 1908 and 1914, finished none of them, although a stage he won in 1911 caused the coining of domestique. Brocco's chances in 1911 ended when he lost time on the day to Chamonix. Unable to win, your next day he offered his services to other riders, for which he had a reputation. For a section while Faber was in danger of being eliminated for taking too long and the two came to a deal. Brocco waited for Faber and paced him to the finish. Henri Desgrange, the organizer and chief judge, wanted to disqualify him for breaking the rules. But he had no proof and feared Brocco would appeal to the national cycling body, the Union var copyright loss par copyright Dicfrena sectiones. He limited himself to scorn in his newspaper, L'Auto, writing, "He is unworthy. He is no more than a domestique." Next morning Brocco greeted Desgrange with, "Today, monsieur, we are going to settle our accounts." He won the day by 34 minutes. Desgrange followed him and the yellow jersey, Gustave Garrigou, as they climbed the Tourmalet. "So, am I forbidden to ride with him?" Brocco shouted. On the following mountain, the Aubisque, he dropped Garrigou, passed Paul Duboc, who had been poisoned and was in agony beside the road, and took the lead with a per-mile judget. Desgrange was still watching. "Allez, quoi," Brocco shouted, "do I have the right to stay with him?" And then he rode off alone and won. He had made 2 points to Desgrange. The first was that he was a talented rider and not a servant. The second was that he had so much talent that his poor riding with Faber could only have been through a commercial arrangement. Desgrange replied that any rider with such flair had clearly been selling the race. "He deserves his punishment," Desgrange wrote, "immediate disqualification." Domestiques had long been accepted in other races. Desgrange believed the Tour should be a race of individuals and fought repeatedly with the sponsors, bicycle factories, who saw it otherwise. Desgrange got rid of the factories' influence only by reorganizing the Tour for national teams in 1930, with the effect that he thereby acknowledged teamwork and therefore domestiques. Devoted domestiques. The dominant climber of the 1950s, Charlie Gore, was followed for as long as he could last by Luxembourger Marcel Enzer. The two men were of similar size and rode bikes of exactly the same dimensions, even though that made Enzer a little low in the saddle. He was always there to give his bike to Gore when it was needed. Andrea Carri was a domestique for Fausto Coppi. He was a gregario par excellence, said the journalist Jean-Luc Gatelier, the incarnation of personal disinterest, showing to perfection the notion of personal sacrifice. He refused the slightest bit of personal glory. Carri was riding the Tour de France of 1952 and joined an attack to Lausanne to protect his leader's interests. Carri said, "Without knowing it, I had slid into the important break of the day, and at Lausanne, to my great surprise, I heard I had inherited a jersey destined for champions. For me, it was a terrible situation." Carri had no idea he had become race leader. When officials told him, he burst into tears. He had ousted Coppi and he dreaded the consequences. He wept as he received his jersey, looking constantly down the road for the main field that included his leader. Jean-Paul Olivier said, "Carri thought the sky had fallen in. How would Fausto take it?" When the champion arrived a few minutes later, Carri went towards him in tears to offer his excuses. "You must understand that I did not want this jersey, Fausto. I have no right to it. A poor man like me, the yellow jersey?" Coppi said, "I wondered how Carri, so shy and so emotional, was going to take it. When I went to congratulate him on the track at Lausanne, he didn't know what face he ought to adopt." Jose copyright Luis Arrieta was a domestique for Miguel Indurain. La Permil Cup said, "He no longer counts the hours, the years, spent with his nose in the wind trying to protect his leader for as long as possible." Arrieta said, "Basic support. Domestiques bring water and food from team cars and shield teammates from opponents. They help teammates with mechanical disasters. Should the leader puncture a tire, the domestique will cycle in front to create a slipstream, allowing him to reclaim their position. A domestique may also sacrifice his bicycle or wheel." Tactical support. Domestiques race in the interest of the team, or against opposing teams. By putting themselves in a breakaway, they force other teams to chase. In turn, they chase a breakaway that threatens their team. Domestiques lead out sprinters by letting them draft behind to conserve energy until the last few hundred meters. The lead-out train sometimes starts 10–15 km to the finish, with up to 8 domestiques setting a pace to discourage others from breaking away. One by one, worn-out teammates drop off. The last to lead a sprinter is often a good sprinter himself. The sprinter will launch into a dash to the line with 100 or 200 meters to go. In mountainous races, domestiques help their leaders by setting a pace or thwarting attacks from others. Hierarchy among domestiques. There is a hierarchy among domestiques. The more accomplished, often called lieutenants or super domestiques, are called upon during critical times. The lieutenant, stays with the leader as long as possible during demanding periods. For example, Lance Armstrong used teammates to set a pace during mountain stages of the Tour de France before a decisive attack. Examples of super domestiques are Andreas Klapp, Paragraph 10, and George Hincapie in the 2009 Tour de France and 2012 Tour de France runner-up Chris Froome. Individual glory. Domestiques sometimes get a chance to win stages in stage racing. Typically this would be late in a stage race. Domestiques whose standings do not threaten the leaders will often not be chased if they break away. Domestiques can progress to more senior roles if they show ability, though the fetching of snacks and sandwiches from the team car back to the front of the peloton is of the highest importance. For example, at the 2012 Tour de France, Tadej van Garderen of BMC Racing Team began the Tour as a domestique for 2011 winner Cadel Evans, but would later become team leader due to Evans struggling and would win the white jersey. Both Chris Froome and Mark Cavendish of Team Sky would also win stages at the Tour while riding in support of winner Bradley Wiggins. Assigned team roles vary substantially from race to race based on a variety of factors, including the course, the team members riding the race, their current physical condition, or even commercial factors. For instance, Stuart O'Grady, a veteran professional rider riding for Leopard Trek, served as a domestique supporting Carlos Sastre in the 2008 Tour de France. By contrast, in the 2008 Herald Sun Tour, a much less prominent race in which Sastre did not ride, the Australian O'Grady acted as team leader and was assisted by his teammates to win 2 stages and the general classification. Evolution of the Domestique. The UCI point system changed the relationship between domestiques and leaders. Previously, domestiques were not concerned with their finishing order. However, riders now get points for their finish position. This presses domestiques to consider their own performance rather than their leaders. The 1990s saw the introduction of radio communication, allowing managers to assign tasks to domestiques wherever they are on the road. The influence of radios on race tactics is a topic of discussion amongst the cycling community, with some arguing that the introduction of radios in the 1990s has devalued the tactical knowledge of individual riders and has led to less exciting racing. In September 2009, the Union Cycliste Internationale, the governing body of pro cycling, voted to phase in a ban on the use of team radios in men's elite road racing. Finally, radio found its undisputed place in peloton for good and, as some races with imposed radio ban proved, the ban changed nothing in racing tactic. See also, List of cycling topics, notes. References. External links, BBC Sport portrait of Domestique Sean Yates. The Guardian article on domestiques at the Tour de France. Roanoke Times column on the team roles in cycling.